Welcome to Flip the Grit Switch, the podcast for high performers who know the real work starts after the win. I'm Nika Hill, speaker, strategist, and the pivot master. I built my resilience in one of the grittiest industries out there, waste and recycling. Scaling and selling that company taught me how to turn pressure into power, and now I'm handing you the resilience playbook. Resilience is a switch. Let's flip yours. You ever have that moment where you realize the thing that used to shake you doesn't anymore? The deadline that once triggered panic now just earns a raised eyebrow, or the criticism that used to sting barely grazes you? That, my friend, is earned ease. Courage isn't a personality trait. It's a record of survival. It's what you earn when you've been through enough tough calls, breakdowns, and figure-it-out moments that you finally realize you've been collecting proof all along. You don't get braver before it gets hard. You get braver because it did. Let me tell you how this episode came about. I was reading a book recently, maybe this summer, and the author referenced a Malcolm Gladwell quote from David and Goliath that stopped me mid-sentence. I've highlighted and emailed it to myself. And he wrote, "Courage is not something that you already have that makes you brave when tough times start. Courage is what you earn when you've been through the tough times and you discover they aren't so tough after all." And that hit me because at some point, every high achiever realizes the storms didn't get smaller. We just got steadier. And that realization became the heartbeat of today's episode. The day fear loses its leverage. So I want to tell you a story about where this was very evident. Early in my career, I was obsessed with inspiration. I'd study other industries, I'd analyze top players, I'd reverse engineer their moves like I was decoding a secret formula. And I told myself I was learning, but really I was collecting permission slips. Every new idea felt safer if someone else had already done a version of it first. I don't know if you've ever been in that kind of a situation, but to be fair, it worked. Until it didn't. Because when you're always looking outward for direction, you eventually forget how to trust your own gut. But one day, deep in the middle of running our waste business, a sales rep came to me and said, "You know that big competitor XYZ, I won't name them, they talk about you in their weekly meetings." Old me would have analyzed that for days. What were they saying? What were they planning? But this time, I just laughed and I said, "Well, that's really nice, but let's not waste energy worrying about what they're talking about. That just sidetracks us. Let's focus on us." And the rep tried to pull me back in to old rival stories. And I remember grinning and saying, "We are scaling a mountain. We don't have time for trench work." And that line came out of my mouth before my brain caught up, but it stuck. Because in that moment, I realized I wasn't chasing validation anymore. I was operating from evidence. All the long nights, the failed bids, the tight margins, the tough hires, the second chances, they had been forging quiet proof. Proof that I could figure things out, proof that I could create what I didn't have yet, and proof that I didn't need outside confirmation to keep moving. Wow. That was the day I realized I wasn't waiting to become brave. I already was. And here's the truth. Courage doesn't show up when everything's stable. It shows up when you finally recognize that instability didn't break you the last time. And research backs it up. There's actually a study in Frontiers in Psychology that found that people who repeatedly adapt through stress actually increase measurable resilience by 30 to 60% over time. Translation: experience literally builds your capacity. And another study found that self-trust, confidence in one's ability to recover, is the strongest predictor of long-term performance under pressure. That is what I call earned assurance. So when you've walked through enough uncertainty, you stop needing certainty to move. You stop over-engineering every step. You stop mistaking preparation for protection. And you start trusting that what you've already lived through is proof you can handle what's next. And that's the shift from grit as effort to grit as evidence. I always talk about the resilience arc and pauses and pivots, but every pause teaches you to see. So you notice what's actually happening instead of reacting to it. And every pivot sharpens your instinct because you start moving based on what you've already learned, not what you fear might happen. And each time you build evidence, the kind that turns pressure into proof and fear into fuel. And that's when courage is the whisper that says, I've done harder things. Experience is the evidence, courage is the proof. And that realization, that earned ease, that's the rise moment. It's when you look at the mountain and realize you've already climbed steeper, you're not necessarily fearless, you're just not flinching anymore. And that's what it means to be built for it. That's what happens when fear finally loses its leverage. So if you're standing in the messy middle right now, wondering if you've got what it takes for what's next, remember, you've already built the proof. Every pivot, every late night regroup, every time you got back up when you could have stayed down, that's your record of survival. You need to flip your grit switch. Focus forward because you, my friend, are already built for this. This is Mika Hill, signing out. Thanks for being here today. If this episode flips something in you, share it with someone who needs that spark and leave a quick review so more high performers can find it. I'm Mika Hill. It's your grit switch. Time to flip it.